Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to HIMediaTV. I'm your host, Evan from Hime. I'm sorry. I'm going to work and I'm still waking up. All right. I want to talk to you guys about the media, the press, and the Fourth Estate, broadly speaking. I want to talk about due diligence. I want to talk about all of these things because I think all of these things are important. And I think that the continued ongoing failures, of the Fourth Estate are not necessarily. I'm slowly starting to feel as if I'm being frank, that all of this willful incompetence, the story is right there, and it's the same thing I feel with the Democratic Party, the right thing to do is right there. It has nothing to do with, wanting to be a good steward or politician, about wanting to be a good journalist, and it has everything to do with oligarchic capture. The fact of the matter is that for the last 30 years, starting in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a complicity within the, powers that be at, major news stations and news outlets. There was always a separation of church and state, generally speaking, when it came to, the money and all that. But over time, back then, news paid for itself. You paid 15 cents for a newspaper. Everybody would sit down and watch the news at night, with millions of people tuning in to partake. Now, with the advent of the internet and, news being expected to be free, all of these any of the news sources that tried to raise their own revenue are mostly gone now. And in their place, the places that stick around are ones owned by conglomerates and billionaires and oligarchs. This gives them the these places don't own them for them to make a profit. They own them for the influence and power that they give. Jeff Bezos doesn't own the Washington Post because he cares about the Fourth Estate and American freedom and journalism. No, he does it so whenever somebody whenever one of his warehouses goes on strike, he can at best prevent any news coming out on the Washington Post to its predominantly liberal viewer base, readership base, or worse, pump it full of opinion columnists saying why it's bad, and try and manufacture consent into having your average liberal suburbanite being against unions even more so than they already are. Same reason Elon Musk owns Twitter. Twitter makes no fucking money. It is a financial black hole. But it allowed Elon Musk to help influence the election to get Donald Trump to win. It allows him to raise the profile of conservative voices all over the world, frankly, and squash any political ideas that essentially would challenge his power and influence. It's manufacturing consent. Noam Chomsky may be in the Epstein files, may have diddled kids with Epstein, and may have been friends with Epstein. But broken clocks, I guess. You know what I mean? I think ultimately this is the same thing and the same issue that we have with the Democratic Party. The Republican, like the oligarchs and the moneyed interests and all of them have decided that democracy in general needs to go. They have decided that they have reached the absolute limits of profitability and power and influence that they can get with democracy, and now see, the common person having a vote and a say at all in the governance of their lives as a liability to their profits, especially since most of us would kill them if we got the opportunity to do so and get away scot-free. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we are looking at an entire power system that has given up on, despite paying lip service to democracy and freedom, they have given up on it entirely. And this includes corporate Democrats, by the way. If Democrats wanted to, wash in a blue century where Republicans are resigned to the ash bin of, American political history, they could. All Democrats need to do is, run on a policy of taxing the wealthy, strong, workers' rights, investing money back into the common man's pocket, universal health care, imprisoning everybody in the Epstein files. But they won't do that because despite what, they might say and pay lip service to, they actually do agree with the Republicans that democracy is dying, but the difference is that they are not, unlike the Democrats, the Republicans are not covert about it anymore. It's stupid, but they are very much more accelerationist in terms of taking away you and mine abilities to engage with a political system that dictates our very lives. And for what? What does that leave us except for just a case of, being some kind of feudalism? People like Peter Thiel don't view the human race as redeemable or worthy. And he's one of the principal architects of the current political system we have right now. Donald Trump is the only chance that a lot of these oligarchs have to do shit that no other Democratic or Republican president would ever be concerned about, because Donald Trump doesn't care about the future. He doesn't care about building power or political dynasties. Even if he wasn't going to fucking die in office, and even if he wasn't going to, and even if he wasn't going to be put in fucking prison at the end of it, if he doesn't, the fact of the matter is that he still has power. He's still a billionaire. He still, at the end of the day, will, if he doesn't go to prison and he doesn't die in office, he'll still be able to go back to Trump Tower in New York City or Mar-a-Lago and live out his best geriatric, hateful, spiteful life, bitching on Truth Social. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to engage. And also, I do want to mind, and we'll talk about this probably a little bit more, tomorrow's Little Black Book. Epstein was one of the principal funders and backers of Poll on 4chan, the crucible that created the modern fascist movement in this country. It was the backbone of the Tea Party. It was the foreground of the MAGA movement. It was the primordial soup that created the modern MAGA movement and the modern fascist man in this country. If the Epstein files have told us anything, is that everything here, everything that we are currently living in. Hold on, motherfucker. I live in the tiniest, dinkiest, small-ass town in New York State. And, of course, the one time I'm recording walking to work, there's a fucking ambulance. Jesus fucking Christ. But the point is that, The power, like the amount, like the powerful, the oligarchs have been planning this for decades. And they're at the precipice of almost getting what they want. And the problem is that the one person that was able to be the vanguard of getting their vision into it is Donald Trump, and he's a fucking moron, and nobody is able to replace him. Lord. To bring it back to media and the Fourth Estate, the media is captured. Even just like how the Republican Party is not really doing subterfuge or double talk to hide their ultimate intentions, the oligarchs are not really caring anymore either. The institution of Barry Weiss at CBS, as she perpetually runs these historic news organization into the fucking ground to serve, the interests of oligarchs and Israel. It's the world is crumbling, and I just feel like as a left-winger, I could see the trajectory of this at fucking 13 when Mitt Romney was running against Barack Obama in his second term in 2012. And I just felt like I've been screaming into the void for years. And now people are saying to me, Evan, you were right. Oh my God, you were right. And I'm like, hey, cocksucker, you should have listened 10 years ago when I told you not to vote for that fucker. I don't know. Either way, here's another chapter closed on my little black book. Thank y'all for listening. Oh God, if you liked this episode, as dour as it is, if you want to join our community and also bitch and scream at the moon or do the political equivalent of screaming into an Altoid tin and throwing it into the void, join my Discord. Links in the description. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to HIMediaTV. I've been your host, Evan from HIMediaTV, and I'll see you guys next time.